Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Back's Road of Illinois on YouTube. It's my final podcast for Farm Progress for Twitter. Thanks for your opportunity for the podcast. I will be focusing on my agronomy stuff, and I want to go have an opportunity for me in my weekly podcast. Yeah, I'm not a big part of my favorite show called Ag Talk. Something is on the horizon for me. I started to create my podcast on YouTube in January 2018 with a friend. Yeah, but I want to go to be a farm broadcaster in Midwest. I want to go to try to make a great opportunity. Without the entire day held by a create a podcast. Yes, it is uneasy, so I can share it with you guys.
I didn't want computer audio, did I?
I don't know. Did you do your in and out?
Please be patient. I'm using a computer to help me communicate, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Caesar. Can you hear me? Very good.
Please be patient. I'm using a computer to help me communicate, Darin. Please bear down with me.
Not a problem at all. I'm doing well, Cesar.
Good morning, Darin. How are you today? Bud, this is my final podcast for Foreign Progress.
Well, that makes it an honor to be on here with you.
Thanks, Darin. How is the market on today?
It's it's pretty bearish all the way across. A lot of red in the markets today.
What up with the report on Wednesday?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I get to introduce you to my line of thought here is that I don't care about reports. To me, they're particularly this particular at the end of March is a bunch of made up numbers, and I think the market's been telling us what's actually out there, the reality of the situation for months now, and we'll see what the numbers say, but I don't get too worked up about it. I don't spend a lot of time looking at them anymore.
I agree.
I like that. That's good to hear.
the markets. It's a great time, but we have to be worried that the market is going to be in deep south for the future.
You're spot on, Caesar. There's a lot that we really have to keep an eye on here. Again, fundamentally, these markets haven't changed. They're not going to change this week. They're still bullish. We still have tight supply and demand, but we've pushed the markets so high. We've got so much money that has come into these markets. Now, what else is there to trade? I mean, is corn really a good buy up close to $8? Is soybeans a good buy in that, in the teens? Or does it need to set back a bit? And that's where our concern is. I looked at the CFTC Commitments of Traders report last Friday, and there's a lot of money already in these markets. Why would they continue to buy? To me, the markets could pull back a little bit. And then we get into planting season, summer weather, spring weather, and everything that leads us up to the fall. I think there's still some strength in these markets, but you're right. They could certainly work lower. They certainly should work lower, at least short term.
How about in the Eastern Europe war?
Yeah, that is a real concern right now. You know, what I'm hearing, and I know there's some folks who have been writing a lot about it, but from what I'm hearing is there is a concern not only for the winter wheat crop that's in Ukraine right now, but the spring crops. Will they ever make it to market? Will Ukraine keep what they have to be able to feed their own country here, basically the rest of this year? So if that's the case, it does make the export market, particularly in wheat and corn, that much more interesting. And so I think those are the two key markets, at least on the grain side, when we are talking about what's going on over in Ukraine.
I just heard about food security between US and the world.
It's going to be a big issue, because we don't have, and I don't mean this to sound terrible, but our supplies in relation to demand as it is right now is relatively tight. So if we're going to change the program, and if we're going to try to make more of our supplies available to the rest of the world, it could be a problem. And again, that's what's going to continue to provide support to these markets. I think after they set back a bit, we're going to see investors, we're going to see the commercial side continuing to buy.
Why now? We are going to be in roaring 20s again.
That's an interesting point. I appreciate you making that reference. It certainly could be. I mean, if this thing plays out, and if the U.S. does try to supply more grain to the world, and right now we aren't having buyers just beating down the door to get U.S. supplies, but if it happens and all this investment money does come roaring in, it's going to be wild times. I mean, I've heard a lot of folks trying to pick tops in this market. I think it's going to be impossible to do. We have to see some sort of fundamental change, and that hasn't happened yet. And again, we're still in March. We haven't even started to take into account U.S. weather here this spring and summer.
The history is repeat itself again.
That is well said, Caesar. And to go along with that, I can't help but think of the other quote of those who fail to learn from history are destined to repeat, are destined to repeat it, or something along that line. And we're going to, we're seeing that play out. That goes back to, what a lot of folks talk about. I've talked about technical analysis, seasonal analysis, where we can use history to kind of find out, how things work. The difference is, every year has some sort of change from when we saw this before. So, we can't go back and really say, this reminds us of 2018 or excuse me, 2008 or 2014 or whatever it might be, because we have a vastly different supply and demand situation at this point. We've not been this tight, particularly on the soybean side, ever. This is record tight. So it does open the door. And if we haven't learned from history what can happen to markets when we get this tight, then we are doomed to repeat it.
It's scary.
Very much so. Very much so, because we're going to see this play out in the cash market. We're going to see this play out certainly in the futures market and so on. And will we be able to meet the domestic demand? Will we be able to find enough supplies to start shipping more out into the world? It's going to be a scary time, and it's all going to depend on the weather. And we have to improve our soil moisture situation across much of the plains and parts of the Midwest, or we're going to be looking at another production problem.
How about your Ken Dow Jones?
Yeah, I have a set of rules that I've put together over the last 30 plus years. And rule number 7, and there's only 7, but rule number 7 is stock markets go up over time. And, so when all is said and done, we can expect these stock indexes to go higher. But that being said, I did, from a purely technical point of view, if we look at the long-term monthly charts, we saw key bearish reversals at the end of January and February. And so this would tell me that from a purely technical point of view, the stock indexes should go lower. The problem is a lot of algorithms and everything these days don't really pay attention to that sort of thing. Do I think that markets could come down? Do I think everything's overpriced? Is, taking it back to your comments about the roaring 20s? Absolutely. I think stocks way overvalued, but there's still money coming in, and money is still coming in despite the fact that we have this inflation going on, and the U.S. Federal Reserve is talking about 6, 7, 8, whatever it might be, rate increases this year alone. All of this should push the market down, but every time it starts to break, it comes right back. It finds that next wave of buyers coming in, that next round of money, and it's able to sustain itself.
That could be collapsing the stock markets is down as well.
Yes, it certainly could. And if I just put my technical analyst hat on and kind of ignore everything else that's out there, I would say we need a big, what I see on those monthly charts should lead to a large, I'll go along with it, I'll say collapse as well. I'm in disagreement, obviously, with many in the industry. Most of the analysts are looking at this as a buying opportunity. I think it could still be a selling opportunity. And if so, how does that change the money flow into commodities? Do we see more money going into commodities as it comes out of stocks? What about the battle against inflation with higher interest rates? Will that cool the money coming into commodities? It's going to be a back and forth as far, for the rest of 2022. And to me, it just comes down to fundamentals. Are we going to get rain? Are we going to change the supply and demand situation significantly?
Wow, that's pretty hectic.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Hectic. Looking at the markets these days, hectic is a good word for it. Chaotic, hectic. There's so many moving parts, and most of them are going against each other. They're grinding against each other. But when we throw everything else out, and I know I'm getting kind of a little bit repetitive in here, but it still comes down to fundamentals. Rule number 6, fundamentals win in the end. Eventually, we're going to see that happen.
Just tell me about yourself.
Yeah, okay. I go back a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. I actually got started, since you mentioned stock markets. I I was working at the local co-op, and I went into this was back in 1987, and I went into our in-house commodity office, and I wanted to start, trading some S&P options, Standard and Poor 500 options. Why? Because I had this feeling that the stock market was going to go down. Well, that just happened to be the week of the week leading up to Black Monday, which is a historic move in the stock markets as far as a collapse. And it was since that point, I got interested in trying to figure out what makes these markets work. How can we read these markets so that we have some idea of not only what's driving them, but where they might be going. So that started me on the road. Again, I've always been in the farm. I grew up on the farm out in Western Kansas. But that moment, I can always point to that moment as being the key to being interested in how markets work.
Hey man, I'm just 24-year-old.
Yeah, yes, I know, Caesar. You are still young in this industry. I get that. I'm a little older than that. I was probably roughly your age when I got involved watching that the 1987 stock market meltdown. Uh, and it's just one of those things, you have these moments in time that have gotten you interested in things, but that's what really sparked my interest in figuring out how to watch these things and how to start tracking and how to start projecting some of these markets.
I remember I learned about 1987.
Yeah, it's that's when you're getting old. As much of what you've experienced and what you've lived through is now in the history books, is now taught in classes about economics or history or whatever it might be. That's when you've been around the block a little bit.
Just now getting to be really difficult and scary.
Yeah, I mean, if we're still talking about, learning about some of the history of these markets and what all they've been through, there's been some difficult times. There's been some scary times. I mean, we've got the 87 meltdown. We've got what happened in 2008. And, that's the thing. is we can learn from all of these things. And so when you mentioned before about how, this situation, the situation that we have here in 2021, 22, and maybe 23, how scary it is. It's because we can go back to those times and we can see how they ended. And most of them didn't end well, and we know that. So we have to be careful, with making too many assumptions about analogous years. Again, because the difference is it usually comes down to fundamentals, but we have seen these sorts of things before. And certainly, as I said, they just normally they don't end well.
Yeah, you were right. I'm Cesar Delgado from Ottawa, Illinois. I do have my disability of cerebral palsy with my communication device. I am studying for agronomy, but I want to go to be a farm broadcaster. Yes, you know about me.
I do. I do. You were kind enough to share some of your background and a lot of the folks that you know in the industry. And, over the years, when I was, senior analyst with DTN and other places over the last, I don't know, 20 some years, I've met a lot of the folks that you've talked about in the industries, and they're great, and they're great to work with. So I'm excited to see where you go with this, because I mean we need the next generation of farm broadcasters coming up, obviously, because a lot of them are as old as I am. So I mean, the younger that we get, if we can get that next generation up and coming, I think it's exciting for the industry because they're learning about all these things, and it's happening at a very exciting time in the industry as a whole.
I want to go to work with Farm Journal.
Yeah, I've talked with folks at Farm Journal. I've talked with folks basically across the industry, and they would be, they'd be lucky to have you. I mean, folks that can ask good questions, folks that are willing to listen and learn about markets, as you've proved. Uh, it's always good, and then they can always get a good foothold and they can get a running start in this industry.
Can you tell C? I don't remember the radio station in Iowa. You were in Iowa.
Yeah, I could certainly pass along. I'd certainly be happy to pass along your name when I visit with them. There's there's all kinds of opportunity. You have, from what I've gathered, you actually have more contacts now in the industry than I do, but I'll certainly be passing your name along because you've asked a lot of good questions here today.
Because what's going on for right now, people have to need to know that.
Yeah, we have seen historic times. I can't really think of another way of putting it. And again, for just starting in this business, my son's the same way. He works with me, and just getting started in this business at these historic times with everything that's going on. There's different questions that need to be asked than the typical, what did USDA say here or what did the USDA say there? That's outdated. There's so much else going on in the markets. It's not all just, chart patterns and USDA reports. The world's a bigger place, and it seems to be getting more, with what's happening right now in Eastern Europe. The world is actually more closely tied together at this point because more countries are reliant on each other. And when we break supply chains, like what's happened over the last couple of years, it really highlights just how the situation has changed and how the questions and the information and what drives the markets has changed.
Yeah, that's true. How old are your son?
Yeah, my son, as I said, it's about your age. And he and I have worked together now. We've opened this business and over the last number of years. And it's interesting, he was always interested in markets, particularly his last few years in high school. And he started writing trading algorithms. And I'm old school. I charted and this, that, and everything else. And so I looked at all the technical factors and fundamental factors, and he was putting together algorithms. And so now that we're working together, he's written algorithms to mirror my analysis, and it's fascinating to watch play out. And so it's just the next generation. He's taking what I've spent 30 years doing, and within a couple of years, he's replicated it. And now it'll just keep going forward. And so it'll be fun to watch to see how it plays out.
I understand that, but could I meet with him?
Possibly at some point. He's not here in Omaha. He works somewhere else. So at some point it would be interesting to get to get you visiting with folks with the next generations of analysts and commentators, traders, and so on.
Heck yeah. They put me on the Illinois Farm Bureau newspapers. They put me on the Illinois Farm Bureau newspapers for February.
That's good. Again, the more new folks can get out and about and get known, that's what it's all about. It took me a long time. It took me a long time with writing. As back then, I was writing for newspapers and things like this. And then you just build up a little network. People find out about you, and before you know it, then you start getting busier.
That's right. I suppose I should on the Mike Pearson show, but I don't hear back.
Yeah, I tell you, it's tough sometimes. It really is. There's been a lot of, I've been on a lot of programs, and then all of a sudden you're not on programs anymore. There's a lot of programs that, I would like to get on and visit with folks. But, a lot of it is just that chance opportunity. And when it does come, when they do invite you, you always have to make the most of it. Sometimes it just seems to take forever, but those opportunities, they do pop up and they do happen. So it's always something to keep an eye out for.
I enjoyed our conversation with you. Please let me know about visiting again.
Well, Caesar, this has been my privilege. Again, as I said earlier, one of the things that I really enjoy is, and I have talked to a number of, I call it generations in this industry, folks my age, younger, and now you're the next generation, and it's fun for me. I guess it gives me a different perspective. I mean, I could sit and talk to the old folks till everyone's blue in the face or blue in the hair, however it turns out. But it's fun, and it gives me a different perspective to see, like when I talk to my son, when I talk to others your age who are just getting started, they're different perspective. As you said, I mean, you weren't around in '87, but you learned it from history books. And today's markets are absolutely fascinating, stuff we haven't seen before. And you'll be able to talk about these like me 30 years down the road. This is what you got to experience when you got started. So it's been my privilege to visit with you.
Thanks for coming out with my final podcast on YouTube.
As I said, it was my pleasure and my privilege to do it, and to know that it was your last one, that makes it even last one for YouTube. That makes it even better.
Hey, could you email me your son contact information?
I can certainly get that put together for you, Caesar. I'm sorry.
Talk to you later. Talk to
Thank
you
you.
later.
And you have a good day as well.
Bye.
I'll goodbye to you, and we'll just leave it as we'll talk to you soon again.
Sounds good. This is Darin from Nebraska. Please subscribe. This is Darin from Nebraska. Please subscribe for my podcast.
See you later.
Thanks again, Cesar.